don't make your audience do math. So if you have numbers on your screen, a big pet peeve of mine is you've now asked me to calculate and make a summary of what you're trying to present. So clients will just put the data on the slide and let the audience make their own assumptions. No, you're the presenter. You're presenting to me.
When it comes to personal branding, we think about ourselves as the brand, and we put ourselves out there, get sales, get them on the call, and then we go to present our brand only to know that we have some sloppy Excel spreadsheet or sloppy slides that we're putting together and putting in front of our potentially multi-thousand-dollar opportunity. And we see that what we represent as a brand is not being represented in our designs, in our sales decks, and all of our assets. And so that is why today I have on Oreet Kaufman. Oreet is the chief designer at OC Presentation Designs, where she helps her clients transform complex ideas into compelling visuals, narratives that captivate and inspire change. Today, we're chatting with Oreet on how she's using her personal brand to drive more business into her company. So Oreet, welcome to the show.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
For sure. So we've talked before, and this is like an area that I think a lot of, especially like solopreneurs who have come from maybe corporate life, where they've had like marketing teams kind of put some things together for them and all the assets, and then they go off into solopreneurship and they start doing everything on their own, and they realize like, wait a second, like I have to all that like design team that I had and the sales team that were putting together all these nice assets, I no longer have. And now they're representing their brand when it comes to important things like sales decks and going out and trying to raise capital. They realize, oh crap, this is I'm not really representing myself very well. So that's why you're here today. Kind of give us an idea of exactly like what it is you do and how you help people like that.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So I will say very simply, I fix presentations that suck. So presentations that, to your point, you said you want to go out there, you want to raise money, you want to make a good impression, you're representing your company, representing your brand. I help your brand look fantastic. So there's two ways that I do that, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit more, but by helping you cut down your content and also bringing those visuals, the right visuals, the balance of the right visuals combined with your story, bring you to the forefront to tell your audience, this is who I am and this is really why it matters and what I'm looking and what I want you to do, the audience, at the end of the deck. So I help amplify your message, transform your message, and I've had a lot of success with clients that are able to then drive the action they're looking for at the end, whether it's raising money, whether it's to inspire action, drive change, or just educate.
Yeah. And who are the types of people that are typically looking to take advantage of your services? I mean, we've kind of already brought up a few in terms of like sales decks, but what are some of the other kind of assets that you help clients improve?
Sure. So I do a lot of company overviews, a lot of marketing campaigns, a lot of sales calls and town halls. So it really varies across different industries and different types of roles. I typically work with communications, marketing, strategy people, but I also work with entrepreneurs who are looking at that startup to get that deck out the door and raise that money. So it varies from small to large across different industries and across different types of presentations. It's really anytime you've got a PowerPoint behind you, you call me.
Yeah,
That's what
there
I
you go.
do.
Yeah. I know I so many times, and I'm like, I get very particular about my presentations, even if it's like an Excel spreadsheet. Everything needs to be like aligned and all that kind of stuff. But I know even just like for those who maybe want to do it themselves, it's a very like I'm sure there's like strategies and there's like it takes time and all that kind of stuff. Like how are you thinking about the best way to represent a brand through, let's call it like a sales deck, for example, where you're looking at it from a different perspective than what maybe like the founder is looking at it for.
Sure. So I'm looking at it from also a formatting perspective. So the founder has the content, he knows the problem, the solution, and how they're going to go to market. I take that idea and I make it really clean and polished. So the perfectionist in me is going to line up everything exactly the right way, make sure it's spaced, it's lined, make sure. And the spacing, it sounds like a small deal, but the spacing impacts your story. How you display your information drives the strength of your story. So I help you do that layout with the formatting and with the placement and the layering so that your message really comes through. So again, that perfectionist in me is making sure everything is lined up. What's capitalized does not need to be capitalized. I think people tend to overcapitalize and make everything a title. I've got plenty of pet peeves in there that I address as well, but it's really making sure that it's clean uh, and spacious and consistent.
What's the difference between then? Like, if there have been examples of people who have been trying to raise capital or trying to make sales with kind of their dirty deck, if you will, versus the one that you come in and you kind of clean up, how have people seen the advantages of working with you and actually having a presentation that they can feel proud of?
Sure, it's night and day difference. So from a sales deck or pitch deck perspective, like I said, they have the ideas and they're the experts in that field, and I'm the expert in the design. So they're able to, it brings clarity to their message. It brings clarity for them and organizes their message for them. So it says, okay, here's your problem, here's your solution, but here's a way to say it that's structured and organized and with the right amount of content on the slide and the right kind of images and balance that gives that power boost to your message. So it gives them that confidence, and that's ultimately what I help presenters do is have that confidence. Whether you're presenting for sales, whether you're getting up on stage as a keynote speaker, having an awesome deck behind you gives you the confidence because you know the stuff in your head, to speak about, but it gives you the confidence to get out there and present yourself, present your message, and that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. And when you have that confidence, you believe in your message more. Believe in your message more. Your audience gets that, they feel that, and then that message resonates better with your audience, and then ultimately hopefully drives to the action you're looking for it to drive. With the sales calls that I've done, I got feedback from a very large client that I did recently that based on my design and how I presented their ideas, their sales reps already knew what they need to do in the field, and they're already out there making sales. So there, it was great to be able to see, action and effect.
Now, it sounds like for something like this, a person who's kind of taking these types of projects on needs to have an eye for design, needs to be very meticulous, needs to kind of know what to cut, I think is kind of what you were mentioning before. So I want to learn a little bit more about you and how did you get into this? Is this something that you were doing previously and then ventured out into, or how'd you kind of stumble into this world?
Oh, I love it, Dave. So I've been doing training and development for about 25 years in the corporate world. So there's always a thought in my head, always operating on the principle of educating, improving, continuous improvement, driving action, driving change, right, through learning. And the last 5.5, 6 years, I was at a great sales company, and my main focus was creating training materials and collateral for the sales team to go out and talk to their customers. It was always in PowerPoint, and we always need to make sure what I call the parking lot training is that what do the sellers need to know what the bare minimum if they're in the parking lot and they haven't done any prep yet? What is the bare minimum they need to go talk to the customer to have a successful conversation and get that sale? So that communication piece needs to be clear, concise, and resonate with them in just the right way without distractions, without charts and graphs and numbers. What do they need to know in the parking lot to make that sale? So that mentality drives my my desire to make communications concise and cut down on the communications. And we'll talk about that also. And then I always got feedback that my presentations look great and they had this desired effect that they wanted on a big stage or on a sales call. So I took those two things and I said, hey, I love cutting down on communications and making targeted communications, cut out the jargon, cut out the corporate buzz, say what we want to say, get to the point, but make it look fantastic. Bring those two together, and then wow, you've got a powerhouse of a message. So I took those two things, and I didn't even know this was an industry until a couple of years ago. And I said to my husband at one point, I would just love to make PowerPoints all day. And my niece looked it up and she Googled it, and turns out it's a whole industry. I found a wonderful community of people that do this. It's not doesn't it falls in graphic design. I have no graphic design experience. Mine is all self-taught from my experience and my own learning. but it is a niche there that a lot of marketing departments just don't address. So marketing does a great number of things well, but we find more often than not that marketing departments don't do presentations well. It's kind of that crack that we're able to fill. So it's been a great journey. It's been a great journey building a business, discovering the industry, and really helping customers.
Yeah, I want to talk about the early days of that business then, because it sounds like you kind of stumbled into this. You didn't realize there was even an industry, and so you
Yeah.
said, you know what, I'm gonna jump right in. What was it like getting those first couple clients? Like, how did you kind of start your brand and promote yourself?
So it was a friend of ours was over for dinner one night, and I said, "Hey, I heard this is a thing." And he worked for a voluntary emergency response organization called Hatsela, and he said, "Hey, well, I'm looking for a deck to help educate the hospitals about religious practices. Could you put something together for me?" And I was like, "Ooh, this is a great practice. Ooh, yes, I'll do it." And I did it. And I look back now, of course, it was one of the first decks. And he thought it was great. And the response at the hospital level was great. And the audience knew the cultural norms that they needed to know to do their jobs with this population. And he said, you really should do this full time. And I was like, no, it's just a hobby. It was just a side gig at that point. I just was doing it to freelance on the side on the weekends. He goes, no, you're really good at this. Maybe you should think about it. And that's when I said to my husband, okay, maybe this could be a thing. And I got a business license right away. And I started thinking, like, you don't realize when you first start out all the things that you need to get a business up and running, And I'm like, I just wanted to make PowerPoints. I didn't realize it was all of this involved. But that was it. And then I started a lot of referrals in the beginning. And then I started going to LinkedIn, and that's where I found most of my leads on LinkedIn. So today my leads come from LinkedIn and from referrals.
Love it. And now you've got your book of business. You've started to talk about some of the strategies that you utilize when working with your clients. And one that I really love was one that we were talking about a couple days ago, was this idea of kind of like decreasing, kind of removing words and such.
The word,
Obviously
the
you're doing
word
a bad
dieting,
job of explaining it. So yeah, you
the
you you
the
talk us
word
through the dieting
dieting.
approach. Yeah.
Yeah. So the last job I was at, apparently they told me what my brand is without me even knowing it. So in my effort to, and I think it's my effort to make things shorter, more concise, is also combined with my impatience in communications of just cut to the chase. So apparently my brand became the kind of person who cuts words, without losing the meaning, right? That's the goal. Cut the words without losing the meaning, but just reduce redundancies and reduce duplicity and just tell me what you want to say. So I started developing this methodology called the word diet methodology, is where you just really take a look at your content and you start to pull out extra words that don't add meaning to the sentence, extra words. The story I like to tell is I was in a meeting for a whole hour about writing business reporting for the sales team. I don't know why I was on the call necessarily, but my value came at the last 2 minutes when they were reviewing the steps of how to run these reports. And they said, Oreet, what do you think? And I said, well, you've got 4 bullets that all start with the same word. I would just take out the first word out of all those bullets because it's repetitive. And they said, that's genius. That's so on brand for you. And I was like, oh, I have a brand. Okay. And it was simple things like that where it hits me right away when I see it. I'm like, oh, that's duplicitous. You're saying the same thing here. Cut that out, cut that out. And then you stand back and say, okay, is my message tighter? Is it cleaner? And did I not lose any of the meaning? So I take out what's called like my proverbial red pen and I just start to look at the story and say, how can we say this, shorter with the same meaning and impact? And I think I speak for a lot of people when I say we're all tired of jam-packed slides with too much information. We're tired of bullets. We're tired of the corporate jargon. We're tired of, brain dumping on a slide. So word dieting really gives you that perspective to look at what you have on the slide and say, if someone else gave this to me and asked me to edit it and cut it down, how would I do that? So being able to look at your own work through someone else's eyes. And that's really what I bring to the clients as well. A lot of designers don't touch the content. I can't do one without the other. So I can't give you a finished product that looks great, but the content is still from 1997. So I bring to the clients what a lot of designers don't do is I bring the content review and editing as well as the design.
Hey, Blueprint fam, if you're enjoying today's episode and finding my guest insights valuable, then you'll definitely want to subscribe to the Personal Brand Blueprint podcast as we drop weekly guest interview episodes just like this one. And on that note, you obviously also see firsthand how powerful being an effective guest, like the one you're watching on this episode right now, can be at attracting qualified, interested leads directly into your sales funnel. But I know what you're thinking. You want to get into guest podcasting, but starting feels confusing and overwhelming. What equipment do you need? And how do you look and sound great? And how do you turn listeners into leads? I know this because so many of my guests had these exact problems in the past. And that is why I created the Podcast Guest Mastery Blueprint. It's a simple but powerful breakdown on everything you need to look, sound, and convert great as a podcast guest. Everything from how to set up your recording area to what equipment you need to look and sound great on camera, and what to say on podcasts to stand out, be memorable, and earn the audience's trust. And then that one key strategy to turn listeners into leads. I'm telling you, this isn't just another checklist. This is a step-by-step blueprint to make sure you look, sound, and present your best on podcasts so you can convert that attention into leads and ultimately new business. I honestly was thinking about selling this for like $97, but I'd rather give access to this guide to my Personal Brand Blueprint podcast audience for free. So if you are ready to become a sought-after podcast guest and use it to generate leads and build your personal brand, and grab your copy of Podcast Guest Mastery Blueprint at davepoly.com/podguestblueprint. You can find the link to that in the show notes below. Again, that's davepoly.com/podguestblueprint and start turning podcast interviews into business. Again, it's completely free for being a loyal listener, so definitely check it out. Cool? All right, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, I think it's an important point there too, because when you're so close to the material as maybe the founder or finance person trying to raise capital, whatever it is, things can make sense to you because you're the
Right.
one who created the deck, and you understand what's happening there. But I think a core value here is actually handing that off to someone else who maybe has no idea about the industry in general, and then reviews it and goes, okay, this needs to tighten up, or there's too much words here. I'm getting lost in the sauce or whatever, right?
Yeah, and that's what I say to the customers to begin with is before we get started, part of the process is what is your desired outcome? What do you want to accomplish with this content? What do you want your audience to do, to say, to act, to what do you want, what action do you want them to take? And then with my years of learning and design development experience, I take them backwards from that to say, okay, this is the desired outcome. Now we're going to build the deck backwards to make sure we meet that desired outcome through proper storytelling, through proper content editing, and bringing in the right graphics and design as well. So it's a package approach in order to get to that desired outcome.
What are some of the things? I mean, I know everyone listening has made some sort of slideshow deck at some point, whether it be sales deck, raising capital, whatever it is. What are the things that you see that you just kind of shake your head and roll your eyes at, of like the just common just mistakes or like tropes of sales decks that you constantly see people are doing that they should not do?
How much time do we have, Dave?
Yeah, we'll have a part
I
two.
would say at a very basic level, I've seen slides that still have speaker bubbles, different colored bubbles, speaker, none of that. This is not career day show and tell. I think a lot of people also on a more professional levels, the mistakes we still see are a lot of over animation. I tell customers this is not show and tell. This is not when you get in the car and you want to push all the buttons and try everything. So there's certain animations that are good to use that are effective. And I like to use animations to help the customer drive the story. So if you're offering your services, for example, I'll usually animate those services just so that you have time to speak to each of the services one at a time, and then you control that story. So there's about three or four, maybe five tops animations that I would use in a deck. Same thing with transitions. I don't want to see the curtains or the sparkles. But I think the biggest pet peeve we've all seen is just too much content on a slide. It is not a catalog. It is not a biography. It is not a book report. It is not you got to pull out, and that's part of the word dieting is understanding what your key message is. And if you've got a paragraph that talks about the services that you provide, if you could summarize those services in 1 to 2 words, use those 1 to 2 words, and then put the paragraph below it. But pulling out those key messages is so key. Spreading it out among multiple slides. A lot of clients are nervous to have more slides, and I think there's a right balance there. But with one idea on one slide each, you're balancing your message, you're controlling the message, you're keeping your audience's attention, given that there's 3 to 5 seconds per slide that they spend on each one. You're able to better present your story. So I think it's the kitchen dumping of content. Confusing graphs. My God, I don't want to see another graph. I've mentioned this earlier, is that don't make your audience do math. So if you have numbers on your screen, a big pet peeve of mine is you've now asked me to calculate and make a summary of what you're trying to present. So clients will just put the data on the slide and let the audience make their own assumptions. No. You're the presenter. You're presenting to me. So even as simple as if you're telling me 2/3 of people don't read my slides, don't say 2/3. Just tell me 66%. Do the math for me. Don't make me think, because with 3 to 5 seconds per slide, you've now required an extra function in my brain that's taken away time from absorbing your message. So there's a whole list of pet peeves, but I would say the over animation, the childlike graphics, brain dumping all the content on a slide, and overwhelming with graphs and charts. Pull out the important numbers, focus just on those numbers, and tell the story. No one is reading your graph like you think they are. Nobody's tracking like you think they are.
Yeah, you mentioned, because we mentioned a couple different types of presentations, we'll say. So could be, like you said, for behind you when you're a public speaker, could be when you're looking to raise capital, could be a sales deck, et cetera, et cetera. Is there like different tactics that you take, knowing what the purpose of the deck is, that maybe you wouldn't apply across different types of decks?
Yeah, I would say design tactics is if you're doing for a keynote speaker or a large, huge audience, your font size is going to matter so people in the back row can see it. Your colors are going to matter based on if the lights are on or off in a big room. Your graphics are going to matter based on how they project on a big screen. So there's a couple of considerations there to think about. Your choice of animation and a large screen versus a small screen. If you're talking to a lot of executives, again, watch your animations. There's a different voice that you use when you speak to executives than when you speak to investors, than when you speak to sales reps, than when you speak to engineers. So know your audience. I meet with the clients and we talk about who your audience is, what they know or don't know already about the topic, and again, what your goals are of the deck. But your voice changes in the deck, and your design choices change in the deck as well, based on what the format is.
Love it. So I want to get into now, obviously very knowledgeable about this space, and it's kind of like you said, it's a very niche space that I don't think a lot of people know there's opportunities and services out there to take advantage of this. So what has your process been for using your personal brand to actually attract new clients to your business? I know you mentioned LinkedIn is one of them, obviously podcasting, but kind of walk us through early, especially early days. Like you said, referrals was one thing, but the referrals dry up at some point, right? So like what's kind of your strategies here?
So yeah, in the beginning it was referrals locally with family or friends or somebody who knows somebody. Obviously, that's what a referral is. And then on LinkedIn, I advertise the benefit of bringing that content and that clear messaging as well as the design, because a lot of people think, oh, it's just a slide, it's just a PowerPoint and whatever. But I sell it as it's really a communication tool and a marketing tool. So if you've got your message right and your image is right, you've got a powerful communication tool as well as a marketing tool. And I think that speaks a lot to people to understand how to pivot the perception of what I do, and really realize that it's got a lot of potential impact. In terms of finding the leads, it's really mostly through LinkedIn. It's through podcasts. I do go to I used to go to some networking events, and then I found that it wasn't really my target audience.
Mm,
And I've also tried to build strategic partnerships throughout the way, probably the last 6 months or so. Different types of partnerships where somebody would need my services and I would need theirs. So, for example, I partnered with a marketing agency where they do websites and the websites and email and SEO and graphic design. And we partner with each other for presentation design if there comes a referral and vice versa. So it's about finding avenues where your services would be needed in a market that doesn't currently offer it. So I also partnered with, I don't know if I can say the name of these companies. Can
oh,
I
by
say
all
them?
means, yeah. Yeah.
All right. So the marketing
We'll,
agency is
we'll invoice them
amazing.
later.
Yeah, the marketing agency is Worldly Strategies with Becca. She's great. And then the other person I partner with is Paul Creeder of Creeder Creatives, and he helps speakers get up on stage and really present their story from a verbal perspective. So I reached out to him asking if he would any of his clients would be interested in presentation design, and he's like, hey, why don't we partner? I'll help people with the verbal, you help them with the visual. So we've been able to create this partnership to really bring to the client a combined service that when you get up there on stage, we've got you on the verbal, we've got that deck behind you, you know. And then, as I mentioned earlier, some designers don't do content at all. So I subcontract with some designers that I do their content and they do the design. So I've been able to find and think about what are some other ways, and these are ideas that I thought of on my own. What are some ways that I can create partnerships, different industries, different types of services that they provide, while I still provide the same thing to everybody, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's been a great journey with finding people, creating friendships and partnerships, expanding my network, expanding, and then they refer you out to other people as well. So I think it's really about building relationships where you see opportunities and not only for opportunities, but for the sake of relationships as well, to try to create that combined service offering.
Yeah. No, I love that approach because I think the specialty is something we're seeing more and more of nowadays. Like typically there was like the digital marketing agency and it would do a full suite, right? You know, website design, copy, SEO, ads, all this stuff. And I always felt that like those types of full suite digital marketing agencies like did everything okay, but never one thing really good. Or they'll do one thing really good, and everything else will just be kind of okay. Because typically those agencies started by doing the one thing, and then
Yeah.
their clients go, "Oh, do you also write blog posts? Oh, do you also do web design?" And they're like, "We should probably start doing that," but they're not good at it. So kind of like the fractional agency now of like everyone having their specialty, but then just kind of partnering and in some cases maybe white labeling or whatnot, but just passing referrals or a trusted partner is kind of the new age way of doing this kind of like fractional agency, and everyone wins. I think at the end
Yeah.
because as long as there's good communication, good account management, it still works out.
Yeah, I would say I'm not a graphic designer by any sort of certification or training. So I don't do websites, logos, none of that. I don't know how and I don't want to learn how. I really focus and specialize primarily in PowerPoint design, not even Keynote, and I dabble a little bit in Google Slides. But I'm proud of the way that I've been able to leverage myself in different ways while still sticking to my core expertise without stretching myself too thin, and still focusing on that. And because I focus just on one tool, then I've been able to become an expert in that and really bring my expertise to the client.
Now, you mentioned LinkedIn is an avenue for lead generation. What are some of the tactics you're taking on there? Is it more outbound? Is it more content creation and let people come inbound? What's your approach?
I do both. I post about 2, 3 times a week as an expert in the field, whether it's advice, whether it's before and afters, whether it's empowering people to know design, like I said, design advice. I also reach out to many people, almost 100 a week, and I'm very careful who I target. So I've taken me a long time to identify the roles, the titles, the industries. I look at each one and look at each one's profile and I see how long have they been in that role. If they've only been on the job for 3 months, they're not in a position to make decisions. Are they in a position? Are they a decider? Are they a decision maker? Are they an influencer? how, like I said, how long they've been in the role, if we have any common connections, how many connections they have. So I do like my own little analysis of each one. And then I have different scripts that I use to reach out to different people based on the industry, based on how I'm going to pivot the story a little bit. So my pitch to a sales leader will be different than a pitch to a strategy or communications person. So they pivot slightly. And I refine it all the time. I refine my pitch to sound authentic, to sound like me, to sound like I want to have a conversation. I don't want it to sound salesy. I want it to sound like, hey, I bet you're struggling with this. I've seen it. I've helped other clients, and I can help you too.
Mm.
Um, so, so
Yeah,
that's the approach I
how's that
take.
experience been? Because obviously on LinkedIn, there's a lot of pitch slapping with reaching out, but I mean, it's a B2B network. Naturally, people are looking for opportunities. People are from both ends, trying to present their service, and professionals who are on there to find solutions and services. It just necessarily they don't necessarily want it to be unsolicited too much. But
Yeah,
some people don't know how to do that well. It's a lot of
yeah,
like connection. Hey, 3 paragraph long. Hey, do you need this service? And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. First of all, I'm not reading
right,
this 3 paragraph
right.
message you just sent me. And two, this is you don't know who I am. You don't know if I'm even qualified, whatever. So how do you how are you keeping that in mind when you're reaching out and you said you have some scripts like, what how soft of a sell is that?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, I use premium, and so I can add a note to every connection that I make. So I'd never cold call anybody like that. I think that's kind of rude and impersonal. Like, I wouldn't want it. So, and obviously, if I have a connection, and when I look at my connections that I have with somebody, mutual connections, I only reference someone I actually know. So I have a lot of connections on LinkedIn, a lot of them just connected, but I don't really know them at all. So I always try to reference the person that we know because you never know if they're going to call them and say, hey, do you know Oreet? And then so I attach my solicitations with a note to each one. And so with premium, I also select like the top 15 per month that I really want to hit and write a little bit of a longer message. I'm constantly crafting it to think about how do I make it sound more authentic because nowadays with AI, you can make anything sound authentic, right? Sometimes I want to say like, no, it's really me. It's not a robot. And then I thought, well, you could say that and a robot could say that.
Yeah, right. How do we
So
know? Prove it.
it's really hard to make something sound authentic with AI, and I'm constantly, probably about once every 2 weeks, evaluating the pitch by audience, keeping it. This is I recognize the problem that they have. You probably have this communication problem. I've helped these companies, and you want to sell the benefit, not what not it's not a display of your skill sets. I think it's recognizing a problem. So someone who's not going to read your paragraphs, oh, Orit knows I have this problem. My slides are crowded. I don't know how to communicate clearly. Oh, she's worked with big companies. Okay, maybe I'll engage in a conversation. So I think it's selling that you know how to fix the problem and then selling the confidence that comes out of it. So I've read a lot about marketing and behavior marketing of why people respond to different solicitations. And it's short to the point of you recognize I have a problem and you have a solution for it. Fantastic. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
So it's not a brochure about your services. It's about, oh, she recognizes that I'm struggling with this and it's worth a conversation. So I
Right.
think my connection rate on LinkedIn is about 20% of people I reach out to who connect with me. The rate of people who I have conversations with to signing as clients is about 40-45%. And I understand that's pretty good. Um, so so it's a strategy I keep going at while still, like I said, finding other partnerships. Also thinking about offering kind of a master class in word dieting. Have spending an hour, people come, bring me your content, we'll have examples, let's cut it, cut it, cut it. And in an hour, I will give you the tools that you need to go back to your desk and crank out a great communication that may not be perfect, but it's by far better and you have the understanding and the approach of what you need to do to approach to communicate more clearly. So again,
Yeah.
finding different avenues.
I love the that concept. It sounds like kind of like a office hours type of approach where
Yeah.
like people can come. And I was actually just talking with someone about this today, this morning, about this idea of like creating watering holes, basically creating a communal space, hosting a communal space for people to come and get value. And, that could take the form of kind of like what you're doing, like an office hours, could take, kind of an open podcast where people can come and learn, maybe just a digital community or an in-person event, but creating value that multiple people can come interact with others with, get value from you, and you're the host. So like people are looking to you and seeing, okay, let me check out what this person has, or I appreciate this person more. So I kind of feel a little bit indebted to like kind of look more into what they do and see if it might be of value to me. So I love this idea of just like creating space for people to come and get value without feeling pressure
Yeah.
to purchase something.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Along those same lines, I also offer on-site team training. So a lot of people hire me sometimes because they don't have time, they're meeting a deadline, or they've got people who do it, but they don't have time to do it. Like they need them to work in other areas. But also, there's I just posted recently on LinkedIn about giving someone a fish and you teach them, feed them for a day. But if you teach them PowerPoint training, you will have them win clients. So, that ability to come to a client and spend a couple hours with their employees and teach them how to do some basic to medium skill sets on presentation design. And now, instead of hiring a freelancer, you've got a team, 5, 6, 10 people, whatever it might be, who are empowered as your go-to team. So, that way I'm trying to offer those services and create that community as well to say, you can do this. And it takes practice and it takes learning, and I'd say a lot of practice, but you can do it and I can help your team get there.
You mentioned, so you're doing outbound and you're also posting content on LinkedIn as well. Have you found that the content that you post helps when you're doing the outbound? Are people going to your profile and kind of checking out who is this person?
Yeah.
Are they active?
Yeah,
How is
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. Well, with premium, they tell you who's looking at your profile. So I would say, yeah, on a daily basis, I'm getting people looking at the profile. My website clicks have gone up, my views have gone up because they've mostly never heard of this type of industry, and they want to see, listen, you're hiring someone to do a professional service. I want to know if they've had professional experience. So they look at my profile to see my professional experience. And so, yeah, I'm definitely getting those views. My profile and the site definitely gone up.
Yeah. And I like this, what you mentioned before, within this like office hours space, it's a bit of like, hey, bring me what you have and we'll dissect it together. It kind of reminds me a little bit about people who do landing page design, and they'll do like, um, I forget the exact way that they phrase it, but like, I'll bash your landing page for you. There's like harsher language to it, but the idea is send me your landing page. I'm a landing page expert, and I'm going to get out my red pen and I'm just going to
Yeah,
absolutely go to town on everything I think is wrong with it and how you can tweak it and all that kind of stuff. But it's valuable for those people because, they probably put their landing page together themselves or used a template or whatever. And so for an expert to kind of give free advice is a great lead gen, but also great content, that people get to see
yeah,
your expertise and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know
yeah.
if you're like recording or capturing those moments, but I feel like that would make also great content.
Yeah, that's a great idea. My sister calls it giving bread and olives. So when you go to the
Mm.
restaurant, they give you a little bit of free bread and olives.
Yeah.
Give them something a little bit up front. So that would be like my bread and olives. So I love the expansion of that idea, Dave. Thank you. And I definitely want to explore that.
Cool. Well, Reed, this has been awesome. I like to kind of end these episodes with just one thing. If you were to kind of have your ideal client in front of you, making all the mistakes that they constantly make, and you could just kind of shake them and give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
Less is more. That's it.
Easy. There you
Make
go.
up and make up in PowerPoint slides. Less is more.
I think you should just stop the advice right there because less is more is all you need to say, and you don't need to say any more. I think that's
That's right.
justified.
That's my word
Um,
dieting. Less is more.
there it is. All right, this is awesome. If people want to learn more about you and your business, where should they go? Anywhere, anything you want to send them to?
They can go to my website, ocdesigns.info. There is a page about word dieting as well with some of the examples we talked about and a PDF you can download. And There's a page for all my other different services, but you'll be able to see the testimonials from clients I've had the pleasure of working with and my portfolio of work. So very excited.
Awesome. Go definitely check that out. Links are in the description. Oreet, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you, Dave. It was great.
Wonderful. We'll catch you all in the next episode of the Personal Brand Blueprint podcast.